Good girl. Good girl. So one of the things when you've got a dog who's got a history of aggression against the owner is that sometimes they find it really difficult to be groomed. Liddy didn't have a history of aggression against me, but she certainly did not like being brushed. So if you've got a dog who doesn't like being brushed, or who has got a history of resource gardening and guarding their space, their garden food, then they quite often don't like being handled. And so Liddy likes being handled, as you can see. It's one of her favourite things, isn't it? Yes, it is. It's one of her absolute favourite things. But this brush in particular was prickly. So if you've had a bad experience as well, you might need to do a little bit of work to kind of reintroduce them to the brush. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use a little bit of food, and I want her to come back, and I'm just going to start by using a paintbrush. So this is really soft, it's not going to prickle her. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw the treat away. Ready? And when she comes back, I want her to orient to the paintbrush. Yes. And I'm throwing the treat away because I don't want her hanging around me. She's just investigating my hand, but the brush is there. And the treat goes away. Yes. And this time I'm going to move the brush onto this side, because actually what I want her to do, ready? Yes. I'm just going to use another treat to move her away. Is I want her to move to this side of me. Yes. Good girl. So, because it's what's not helpful is to try and do grooming over the top of the dog. So if I'm brushing over the top of her, my hands are going over the top of her. You can already see this is exciting for her. She's all right with it. She knows she can cope with it, but it's already, getting her worked up. And if I'm trying to dive in over the top of her, especially if I'm leaning in like this, it's going to be really uncomfortable for her. So let's have one more. Good girl. So this time, I'm just going to be brushing her with a paintbrush, just a little bit. She's more interested in finding food. Hello. Good girl. You see how she put herself side on? And that's so much more helpful. So the food going away gives her the choice to come back. Okay? That says, oh, and that's a perfect grooming position. Hello. Now, it'd be tempting to use food just there. Hungry today. And to have her eating while I'm grooming her. Oh. I'm going to just wait a little minute until she stands. She's lost the food. Until she stands in a position. Good girl. So she's known as soon as that comes over, so that was 3, that there's going to be food. And the food goes away, she's got the choice to come back. As soon as I start touching her, I want her to move into that position. That's even nicer, because a dog who's got a history of biting you, if they face it, you see she's looking backwards, oh, that's nice. And grooming in itself should be pleasurable, you know, I shouldn't necessarily need to use food, that should be pleasant in itself. So the paintbrush is much softer. I'm going to stop, even before I think I absolutely need to, and just check with her that she's still, she's still consenting, that she's still happy for me to do that. What you see is in the past where she was kind of leaning around and biting the brush and, trying to get to it. Oh, that's nice. She's not doing that anymore. So a paintbrush is a nice way to start. Obviously it's not really grooming her. Before then I can swap in future sessions to what lives around there, to using a more stiff brush or a comb, or even a flea comb or a tip comb, which I quite often do. So I'm not leaning over, her mouth end is away from my hand end. And what I'm also doing is I'm starting with the bits that I know she finds most comfortable. So most dogs, the back tends to be more comfortable unless they've got particular medical problems. The hips can be tricky if they've got hip dysplasia or things like that. A lot of dogs, especially if you've got a history of you grabbing the collar or somebody else grabbing the collar, might not like to be touched around the collar and might find it more unpleasant. Oh, that's lovely, isn't it? That's lovely. Oh, it is lovely. Oh, it's lovely. And so they might find, you know, when it starts to come up, you see how her head dipped a little bit there and she moved away? Partly because, you know, maybe wanted food. So a lot of dogs are going to have more problems handling. Oh, you see how she's soliciting it, then she's nudging there. All right, because we worked out that brushing means food. And every time this is going to go away. She's got the choice to move in. I've also put my other dog outside so that he's not interfering with the process. She's tolerating it a little bit less now, and that's fine. It's up to her to choose how long she's going to tolerate it. Oh, that's lovely. So where dog's going to find it hardest, see how she's dipping her head as that's moving in? It's perhaps around the head. Spaniels are absolute sods for resource guarding, and a lot of them come with ear problems as well, and then it becomes a self-perpetuating problem. So we had a Bernese mountain dog who came in with enormous ear problems and grooming problems, who couldn't get near his head. So he was very touch sensitive there. And using a paintbrush to start with builds up that positive association. See how long she's tolerating. I'm just going to check that she's accepting that still. Good girl. She's got the choice to always move away. And she's telling me, you know, which bit she wants grooming. Oh. And my preference is that it's this kind of position. Yes. You see she's getting a little bit more mouthy now, and her mouth is opening. So I'm going to slow down, go more gently, and not do too much. And when it comes to doing the trickier bits, like some dogs have a problem with being touched underneath their belly, if they've got a wound site that you've had particular problems with, if they've had ear infections, eye infections, those are going to be the places where you're going to do it for a short little burst, then use some food, move the dog away. So say for instance Lydia had had an ear infection and she was being tricky to get her ears going. So I would do her ears just a little bit. Ooh. Throw the food away. And what's going on here is that she's consenting. She's coming back. She knows what the brush is for, and this is going to build up over a period of time. She knows she has to be brushed to get the food. Good girl. Is that a beautiful girl? And then you can start swapping out the food for praise. You see she's shaking a little bit for food. Oh, yes, that's lovely. She's a very good girl. So whatever your dog will work for, it may be food, it may be a toy opportunity or whatever. I like to use things that are going to calm them down. Lydia just likes contact, so I can use some actual petting in my hands because she likes that. Oh, she does. Does she? And if I want to know whether she does, stop and see what she does. You want more? Oh, please. You are such a good girl. Yes, you are. And then I'm going to switch on to different brushes. So this is the brush, yes, that we've had before that is a bit more prickly. Oh, careful, don't want to. I need to be careful that side because if she touches her nose to that prickly side, good, she's going to catch herself on it, and she's wounded herself on it in the past because it is quite sharp. Like my alligator undercoat. Not quite the same, is it? Good girl. And so I'll just go back to being more gradual and more gentle. See how she's that bit further away from me with this brush? So I'm not going to do so much with that brush. Good girl. No, we've been brushed. Oh, she's good. She's a good girl. And these are the kind of positions where her face is, you know, direct to mine. Where if I start looming over and making her feel uncomfortable, I'm not going to be able to see the warning signs and I'm not going to be able to move away. So that's my absolute favourite thing. See how she's more agitated there? So I'm just going to stop. Good. Good girl. And then then move on to the tricky bits. You know, the dog will direct you sometimes as to what bit they want doing. But brushing should be a pleasurable experience, grooming should be a pleasurable experience. And for a lot of dogs it isn't. Partly that's because we're forcing them to. But I'm such a lazy trainer. What I want is for me to get my brush out and my dogs to go, you know, from wherever, like this. So for instance, Lily's just over there and I can say, time for a brush. Whoa, you can see my hand. I gave it away. Time for a brush. Yay! Oh, good girl. And if she's not in the right position, I'm just going to wait until she shifts a little bit. I won't be waiting forever.